Welcome to Brush Lettering Uppercase Alphabet Part 1, the first in a two-part series showing you how to draw beautiful uppercase brush letters using Sakura of America's Koi coloring brush pens. My name is Erica Pinto and I'm a hand lettering artist from Toronto, Canada. This two-part video series does not cover basic strokes or the lowercase alphabet. If you are new to brush lettering, I strongly recommend starting with the brush lettering, basic strokes, and lowercase alphabet videos, which are available on the Sakura of America website or YouTube channel. In this video, I'll be taking you through the uppercase letters A through M. The supplies I'll be using in this video are an assortment of Koi coloring brush pens, the brush lettering uppercase alphabet and blank guidelines worksheets, which you can download on the Sakura of America website, and some sheets of tracing paper. Guidelines are important for learning how to draw letters with consistent proportions. In this video, I'll be referring to the following guidelines as I work through each letter. The baseline, which is the line on which our letters sit, the waistline, which is the dotted line above it, the ascender line at the top, and the descender line at the very bottom. I've also included slant lines so that we can draw our letters at a consistent angle to one another. So let's get started with our alphabet. I'll break each letter down into its individual component strokes and then show you how to put these strokes together into a single letter. Letter A begins with a thin upstroke from the baseline to the ascender line, followed by a full pressure stroke from the ascender line back down to just below the baseline, where it rounds out to a thin exit stroke. Finally, I add a thin curved crossbar along the waistline. Here are those strokes put together. For letter B, I begin with a thin swash as my entrance stroke along the ascender line, similar to the crossbar on the letter A but shorter. This is followed by a full pressure stroke down to the baseline, then a thin stroke back up which rounds out to a full pressure stroke that curves in toward the waistline. The bottom bowl of the B starts with a thin stroke that rounds out to a full pressure stroke, curving below the baseline and transitioning smoothly into a long thin exit stroke. Take your time moving through this letter as there are lots of transitions between thin and thick strokes. Letter C is a variation on an oval. Begin with a thin curve up from the waistline, transition to a full pressure downstroke along the left-hand side, and then transition back to a thin curve up along the bottom right. Letter D begins the same way as the letter B with a thin swash, followed by a full pressure downstroke, then a thin stroke up toward the ascender line that rounds out into a full pressure curve back down below the baseline, finally transitioning into a thin curved exit stroke along the baseline. Letter E begins just above the waistline with a thin curve up, transitioning into a thick curve down toward the waistline. The bottom half begins at the waistline with gentle pressure, transitioning right away into a thick curve down toward the baseline and rounding back up with a thin curve along the bottom right. I like to end this letter with an additional curve inward, applying just a little bit of pressure. Letter F starts with a full pressure stroke, followed by a thin curved line along the ascender line, and another shorter one along the waistline. I also like to add a small dash at the end of this line using a little bit of pressure. G begins with a large oval from the ascender all the way down to the baseline. This is followed by a descending stem loop that goes from the ascender line down to the descender line and transitions into a thin exit stroke. Here they are put together. Letter H starts with a short, thin swash, followed by 2 full pressure strokes from the ascender line down to the baseline. Finally, I add a thin, curved crossbar along the waistline. Letter I starts with a full pressure stroke from the ascender line down to the baseline, followed by 2 thin curved strokes, one at the ascender and the other along the baseline. Letter J starts with a short, thin swash, followed by a descending stem loop that runs from the ascender line down to the descender line, transitioning back up into a thin exit stroke. This is identical to the descending stem loop used in the letter G. Letter K starts with a short, thin swash, followed by a full pressure downstroke. Moving my pen slightly to the right, I start the top diagonal stroke with full pressure and curve my pen down, gradually decreasing pressure toward the waistline. The bottom diagonal stroke begins at the waistline with full pressure, gradually decreasing as I round it out into a thin exit stroke. Letter L is drawn in a single stroke, beginning with a thin curved upstroke from the waistline to the ascender, transitioning into a thick curved downstroke toward the baseline. I draw a small thin loop and move into a curved exit stroke along the baseline. Here it is again. Make sure that you move slowly as you transition from thin to thick and back to thin again. Letter M begins with a thin swash, followed by a full pressure downstroke. Next comes a large overturn stroke from the baseline to the ascender line, and then another that transitions to a thin exit stroke. This completes Brush Lettering Uppercase Alphabet Part 1. For letters N through Z, check out Brush Lettering Uppercase Alphabet Part 2.